1. Understand the difference between kindness and people-pleasing. At first glance, kindness and people-pleasing might seem like the same thing. They both involve being nice, helpful, and agreeable. But in reality, they come from very different places and lead to very different outcomes. Kindness is a genuine, intentional act that comes from a place of strength, confidence, and compassion. It is rooted in authenticity, a desire to help, support, or uplift someone without compromising your own needs or values. When you are kind, you are doing it by choice, not out of fear or guilt. People-pleasing, on the other hand, is driven by a deep need for approval, acceptance, or validation from others. It often stems from insecurity or fear of rejection, conflict, or disapproval. Instead of being an act of generosity, people-pleasing is an act of self-erasure. It's when you say yes, even when you mean no. It's when you overcommit, stay silent when you should speak up, or agree to things just to avoid discomfort, even at the expense of your own well-being. The problem with constantly trying to please others is that it becomes a habit of self-neglect. You suppress your own emotions, desires, and opinions to fit in or to keep the peace. Over time, this erodes your self-worth. You begin to believe your value is tied to how much others approve of you, instead of who you are. This can lead to resentment, burnout, and confusion about your identity. Understanding this difference is crucial if you want to live a life that's fulfilling and self-directed. True kindness includes kindness to yourself. It allows for honesty, boundaries, and self-respect. When you stop confusing people-pleasing for kindness, you begin to show up in the world more authentically, not as someone trying to be liked, but as someone who values both themselves and others in equal measure. 2. Your time and energy are valuable. One of the most overlooked truths in life is that your time and energy are finite resources. You only have so much to give each day, emotionally, mentally, and physically. Yet when you're too friendly or overly accommodating, you often give those resources away too freely, sometimes to people who don't appreciate them or who have no intention of reciprocating. The result: you're left drained, unfocused, and frustrated, wondering why you never seem to have time for yourself or for what truly matters. When you make a habit of saying yes to everyone, helping with their problems, listening to every complaint, going out of your way to be available, you unintentionally push your own priorities to the background. Your personal goals, rest, creativity, and peace of mind all get sacrificed. Over time, this leads to imbalance. You start to feel like you're living your life for others instead of for yourself. There's also the mental cost to consider. Constantly giving your energy to others, especially when they don't value it, can chip away at your sense of self-worth. You begin to feel used, unseen, or even invisible. You might start to believe your role in relationships is to serve or to be useful, not to be valued for who you are. That belief is damaging and false. It's important to realize that every time you say yes to something or someone, you are automatically saying no to something else, often something that benefits you. This could be time to rest, work on your goals, connect with loved ones, or simply enjoy solitude. You cannot be everything for everyone and still be something for yourself. Being mindful of where your time and energy go is not selfish, it's self-respect. It's understanding that your life is worth investing in, and that you are not obligated to exhaust yourself in the name of being liked or accepted. You do not need to earn your place in people's lives by constantly giving yourself away. Once you recognize the value of your time and energy, you'll begin to protect it with more confidence and clarity. 3. Not everyone deserves access to you. One of the most powerful realizations you can come to in life is this: your presence is a privilege, not a guarantee. Far too often, in an attempt to be liked or maintain harmony, we allow too many people into our emotional and personal space. We answer every call, respond to every message, accept every invitation, and listen to everyone's problems, regardless of how they treat us, or whether they've earned our trust. This is especially true when we're being overly friendly, believing that being open and available to everyone makes us a good person. But the truth is, not everyone deserves a front row seat in your life. When you are too accessible, you dilute the value of your time, attention, and energy. People begin to assume that you're always available, always willing, and always okay with being put last. And once that expectation is set, it's hard to undo. Some people will come to you only when they need something. Others will take advantage of your kindness, using you as a sounding board or a safety net, while never offering anything in return. Still others may drain your energy with negativity, gossip, or toxic behavior, leaving you emotionally exhausted. You must learn to discern who truly deserves your presence. Ask yourself, do they respect your boundaries? Do they support you as much as you support them? Do they value your time, or do they expect you to drop everything for them? If the answer is no, then why are you giving them such easy access to your inner world? This isn't about becoming cold or closed off. It's about being selective with your energy. You wouldn't leave the doors to your home wide open for just anyone to walk in. Why do the same with your emotional space, your thoughts, your feelings, your vulnerabilities? These are sacred parts of who you are. They should only be shared with people who have shown they are trustworthy, respectful, and genuinely care about your well-being. Friendliness without discernment leads to burnout, betrayal, and imbalance. It's okay to be kind to everyone, but closeness must be earned. You are not obligated to keep people in your life simply because you've known them a long time, or because you feel bad saying no. Reclaiming control over who has access to you is one of the most empowering steps you can take, not out of spite, but out of self-respect. 4. Set boundaries without guilt. For many people who consider themselves friendly, generous, or empathetic, setting boundaries feels uncomfortable, even wrong. It can feel like you're pushing people away, being selfish, or risking the loss of a relationship. This discomfort is especially strong in those who were taught, whether through family dynamics, culture, or past experiences, that their value comes from how much they give, tolerate, or sacrifice. But here's the truth: setting boundaries is not a rejection of others, it is an act of protection for yourself. Boundaries are the invisible lines that define what you are willing to accept, and what you are not. They are expressions of your values, your time, your emotional limits, and your personal standards. When you fail to set boundaries, or allow others to constantly cross them, you begin to live someone else's version of your life. You say yes when you mean no, you tolerate disrespect, overextend yourself, and put your own needs on the back burner, all in the name of being nice. This constant self-betrayal creates internal conflict. You may look calm and agreeable on the outside, but inside, you're frustrated, overwhelmed, and maybe even resentful. These emotions don't go away, they build up. Eventually they show up in your relationships, your work, your health, and your peace of mind. The most difficult part of setting boundaries is often the emotional fallout, especially guilt. You might worry that people will think you've changed, that you're no longer as warm or generous, or that you're becoming difficult. But let's be clear, boundaries don't make you difficult, they make you clear. They don't mean you care less, they mean you care in a healthier way, for both others and yourself. Guilt is a normal reaction when you start asserting yourself, especially if you're not used to it. But guilt is not the same as wrongdoing. You are not wrong for honoring your own needs. You are not unkind for protecting your mental space. In fact, boundaries allow you to show up more fully and authentically in your relationships, because they prevent you from giving out of obligation or resentment. You teach people how to treat you by what you allow, what you tolerate, and what you reinforce. If someone reacts negatively to your boundaries, it's a sign that they benefited from your lack of them. The right people will respect your lines. They may not always like them, but they will understand them. Boundaries are not walls to keep people out. They are gates that control what and who you let in, and learning to set them unapologetically is one of the greatest acts of self-respect you can practice. 5. Respect must be mutual. Friendliness is a beautiful trait. It opens doors, fosters connections, and creates a sense of warmth in relationships. But friendliness should never be a substitute for self-respect. One of the most damaging things you can do to yourself is to continue offering respect, kindness, and patience to someone who does not return it. Respect, like trust, must be mutual. When it's not, the relationship becomes unbalanced, unhealthy, and in many cases, emotionally harmful. Too often people who are naturally giving and friendly convince themselves that if they just continue being nice, if they just keep showing up, eventually the other person will change. They believe that their constant understanding and tolerance will earn them appreciation. But in reality, when respect is one-sided, continued friendliness only enables disrespect. It sends a message, even if unintentionally, that poor treatment is acceptable. You may notice it in subtle ways at first. Someone constantly interrupts you, dismisses your opinions, talks over you, or makes backhanded jokes at your expense. Or maybe they consistently take without giving, always expecting your help, but disappearing when you need theirs. These are not small issues, they are warning signs that the foundation of mutual respect is missing. Being friendly does not mean you should tolerate being overlooked, used, or spoken to without dignity. It does not mean you should endure criticism disguised as humor, or accept constant emotional one-way streets. And it certainly doesn't mean you must smile through situations that make you feel small or invalidated. Mutual respect is the bedrock of any healthy relationship, whether it's with a friend, a colleague, a partner, or a family member. It means that both parties see each other as equals, honoring each other's boundaries, time, and individuality. It means you can disagree without belittling, correct without insulting, and ask for space without guilt. When you constantly extend respect and receive none in return, it is not noble, it is neglectful of your own worth. Over time, you begin to internalize the message that your feelings are less important, that your voice doesn't matter, and that being liked is more important than being respected. But the truth is, being liked is not nearly as valuable as being respected. You must be willing to walk away from situations and people who refuse to meet you with equal regard, not with anger or drama, but with the quiet, unwavering confidence that you deserve relationships built on dignity, honesty, and balance. Respect is not earned by being endlessly agreeable or relentlessly accommodating. It is earned by being true to yourself and expecting others to treat you with the same care and consideration you offer them. 6. You teach people how to treat you every day, through your words, your actions, and even your silence. You are teaching the people around you how to treat you. Whether you realize it or not, you are setting the standard for what is acceptable in your relationships, both personal and professional. When you're overly friendly, agreeable, or constantly accommodating, you may think you're just being a good person, but you could be sending a different message that your needs are secondary, that you can be interrupted, dismissed, or taken for granted. This happens subtly. You let a friend cancel on you repeatedly, without saying anything. You let a colleague pile extra tasks on your plate, because you're always so helpful. You let a partner speak to you in a condescending tone because you don't want to start a fight. In each of these moments, you may think you're keeping the peace, but in reality, you're establishing a pattern. You're showing people that you will tolerate this behavior, and once that pattern is in place, it becomes harder to break. The truth is, people will often test boundaries, not always maliciously, but simply because it's human nature. If you don't speak up when something bothers you, they assume it doesn't. If you always say yes, they stop asking if you're okay with it. If you never push back, they begin to treat your silence as consent. And before long, you've built a relationship where you're expected to overextend yourself, always put others first, and swallow your discomfort in the name of harmony. This isn't about blaming others, it's about recognizing your role in shaping how you're treated. You have more influence than you think. If you begin to value your time, others will too. If you demand respect in how people speak to you, most will adjust, or reveal that they were never truly respectful to begin with. If you show that your boundaries are firm, people will either honor them, or remove themselves, and either outcome is a gift. Teaching people how to treat you starts with treating yourself with the same respect and dignity you expect from others. That means not laughing off disrespect, just to avoid conflict. It means no longer agreeing to things that violate your comfort or priorities. It means choosing to correct someone when they cross a line, instead of hoping it won't happen again. Being friendly should never mean being a doormat. You can be warm without being weak. You can be kind without being a pushover. The most powerful relationships are those where both people are respected, valued, and heard, and that only happens when you set the tone for how you expect to be treated, not with arrogance or aggression, but with clarity, confidence, and consistency. 7. Being too friendly can undermine authority, in both personal and professional environments. How you carry yourself shapes how others perceive and respond to you. While friendliness is often seen as an asset, something that makes you approachable, easy to work with, and well-liked, there is a point at which being too friendly begins to work against you, especially when it comes to maintaining authority, leadership, or influence. When you are excessively accommodating, or informal, people can begin to blur the lines between mutual respect and casual disregard. This is particularly noticeable in professional settings. If you are constantly putting others' needs above your own, always making yourself available, laughing off inappropriate comments, or avoiding conflict to maintain a friendly rapport, you may be unintentionally signaling that your position, expertise, or time is negotiable. That's a dangerous precedent to set. Authority, in any setting, is not just about the title you hold, or the knowledge you bring. It's about presence, boundaries, and how firmly you stand behind your decision. If you're overly friendly to the point of avoiding confrontation or accountability, people may start seeing you more as a peer to be managed than a leader to be respected. They might interrupt you in meetings, ignore your instructions, or bypass you entirely when making decisions, not because you're incapable, but because you've allowed the image of constant friendliness to replace the image of someone who commands respect. Even in personal relationships, this dynamic can surface. If you're always the one smoothing over arguments, laughing off rudeness, or avoiding serious conversations to keep the vibe light. People may not take your words or feelings seriously. You become the nice one, who never gets angry, never pushes back, and never demands more. Over time, your role becomes less about mutual connection, and more about emotional labor, managing others' comfort, while minimizing your own needs. It's important to understand that respect and likability are not mutually exclusive. You don't have to become harsh, rude, or distant to be taken seriously. What you do need is balance. Let your friendliness be paired with clarity, decisiveness, and self-respect. Be the person who is kind, but who can also say, "That's not acceptable." Be the one who listens, but who also leads. Your presence should make people feel welcome, yes, but it should also make them aware that you have boundaries, standards, and expectations. Friendliness is a tool, not a strategy. Use it wisely, but never let it compromise your authority, because when you lose the perception of strength or conviction, regaining it requires far more effort than maintaining it in the first place. Being respected and being liked don't have to be at odds, but if forced to choose between the two, respect will always carry more weight, especially in the long run. 8. It's okay not to be liked by everyone. One of the deepest traps people fall into, especially those who pride themselves on being friendly, agreeable, or easygoing, is the need to be liked by everyone. It seems harmless at first. Who doesn't want to be seen as kind, warm, and well received? But when your self-worth starts to depend on the opinions of others, it becomes a dangerous form of self-sabotage. The truth is, no matter how good, generous, or genuine you are, not everyone will like you, and that's not only acceptable, it's healthy. Trying to be universally liked often leads to a slow erosion of your identity. You start adjusting your personality based on the room you're in. You avoid sharing your opinions for fear they might offend. You suppress your boundaries to appear more agreeable. You become overly accommodating, constantly scanning the emotional temperature of others, trying to keep the peace, even when it costs you your own. Over time, this behavior disconnects you from your values, your preferences, and your authenticity. Worse yet, the more you try to please everyone, the more likely you are to attract people who thrive on that behavior, those who will exploit your need for approval. They will push your limits, knowing you won't push back. They'll take, knowing you're unlikely to say no. And because you're so focused on being liked, you won't realize you're being manipulated until the damage is done. It's important to understand that not being liked is not the same as being disliked. Sometimes people simply don't click. They have different values, personalities, or expectations, and that's perfectly fine. You are not responsible for other people's comfort or their opinion of you, especially when being authentic requires you to challenge the status quo, speak up, or take space for yourself. In fact, the moment you begin to prioritize self-respect over universal approval is the moment you gain real confidence. You stop chasing validation and start standing in your truth. You realize that being liked by everyone often requires being untrue to yourself, and you can't build a meaningful life on a foundation of self-abandonment. It's also worth noting that some of the most impactful, respected, and principled individuals in history were not universally liked. They were polarizing, firm, and unafraid to be misunderstood. Their strength came from their conviction, not their charm. And while you don't need to emulate their intensity, you can take a valuable lesson from them. Being yourself, fully, unapologetically, and without compromise, is more powerful than being liked for a version of you that isn't real. There is freedom in letting go of the need to be liked. You begin to attract relationships rooted in mutual respect and authenticity, not convenience or control, and you start to build a life that reflects your values, not the expectations of others. 9. Emotional availability isn't the same as emotional responsibility. When you're naturally friendly, caring, and emotionally open, people are drawn to you. They feel comfortable venting, sharing, and seeking your support. That's a testament to your warmth, but it can also become a burden if you don't recognize the line between being emotionally available and being emotionally responsible for others. These two things are not the same, and confusing them can slowly drain your energy, blur your boundaries, and erode your emotional well-being. Being emotionally available means you're present, empathetic, and willing to listen. It means you're open to connection, to understanding, and to meaningful conversation. These are beautiful traits that build strong human relationships. But when friendliness becomes overextension, when you start feeling like it's your job to fix, carry, or absorb other people's emotional baggage, you've crossed into emotional responsibility, and that is neither sustainable nor fair. You are not obligated to be everyone's therapist. You are not required to stay on the phone for hours, listening to endless complaints or emotional crises that repeat without resolution. You are not a dumping ground for negativity, trauma, or emotional chaos just because you're a good listener or because someone expects it of you. Taking on other people's pain does not make you more noble, it makes you more exhausted. And often, the people who continuously offload their emotions onto you don't take the same time or energy to support you. This dynamic can create an unspoken expectation
patient, that you'll always be there, always understand, always prioritize someone else's feelings, at the expense of your own. And because you're so used to being the strong one, or the kind one, you may not even realize it's happening, until you feel completely emotionally spent, resentful, or invisible. The problem is, the more you overfunction emotionally, the more others underfunction. They become dependent on your support, never learning to self-regulate, solve problems, or face consequences on their own, and you become trapped in a role you didn't ask for, a role that steals your time, your peace, and sometimes your joy. Being supportive doesn't mean sacrificing your mental health. It's okay to listen, but it's also okay to say, I can't hold space for this right now. It's okay to care deeply, but protect your energy. It's okay to love people, and still draw a line, when their emotional chaos begins to affect your stability. Real friendship, real connection, and real love, all include reciprocity. If you're constantly giving emotionally, and never receiving support in return, that's not connection, that's emotional labor, and it's not your responsibility to carry the emotional weight of people who refuse to carry their own. Being emotionally present is powerful, but it should never come at the cost of being emotionally overwhelmed. You are allowed to protect your peace, your heart, and your time, without guilt. 10. Personal growth requires difficult conversations. When you're overly friendly, or overly accommodating, you often avoid difficult conversations. This is a natural response. Who wants to face conflict, discomfort, or the possibility of disappointing others? It's easier to smile, go along with things, or suppress your feelings, to keep the peace. However, personal growth, and the development of healthy relationships, cannot happen without addressing issues, directly, and honestly. Avoiding these difficult conversations may preserve short-term comfort, but it undermines long-term growth, both for you and for the relationships you're in. The truth is, growth, whether in a personal or professional context, requires discomfort. It requires the ability to face issues head-on, and to have the courage to speak up about what matters to you. These conversations aren't always easy. You may have to confront someone about their behavior, express that something isn't working for you, or ask for something that feels vulnerable. But this is how you assert your boundaries, protect your emotional health, and cultivate the deep, meaningful connections that are built on honesty. When you avoid tough discussions, you also avoid change. The issues that you're unwilling to talk about will linger, and eventually show up in one of two ways: passive aggression, or burnout. When we don't express our discomforts, annoyances, or needs in a relationship, it doesn't mean those feelings go away. Instead, they simmer under the surface, slowly eroding your patience, trust, and goodwill. Eventually, you may lash out in frustration, or you may withdraw entirely, both of which create more distance, and more unresolved tension. For instance, if you're constantly agreeing to things that don't serve you, such as taking on extra work, attending events you don't enjoy, or tolerating disrespect, and you never address why these things are bothering you, resentment builds. When you finally reach your limit, the outburst may not even be about the thing that triggered it. It will be about all the things that have been building up over time. It's not about the fact that your colleague asked for one more favor. It's about all the times you said yes, when you should have said no. Difficult conversations also provide clarity. They allow you to express your thoughts and feelings, to state your boundaries, and to allow the other person the chance to do the same. They open the door for growth in the relationship, because when both parties are allowed to express themselves openly, the relationship can evolve. You may find new ways to communicate, understand each other's perspectives more deeply, and develop a better way of moving forward together. Without these tough conversations, misunderstandings persist, and the relationship stagnates. Moreover, engaging in these conversations is an act of self-respect. By speaking your truth, you show that your needs, opinions, and emotions matter. You are valuing yourself enough to communicate openly and clearly, rather than allowing your discomforts to fester silently. This also sets the tone for others. It teaches them that your boundaries are not up for negotiation, and that your voice matters. When you start having these difficult conversations, you stop giving your power away. You stop letting people dictate how you feel, or what you tolerate. Embracing the discomfort of tough conversations is essential for your personal evolution. It's through these discussions that you gain deeper insight into yourself and others, and while it may feel challenging at first, the growth that comes from them is irreplaceable. You emerge with greater self-awareness, stronger boundaries, and healthier, more respectful relationships. In conclusion, the key to creating healthy relationships, maintaining your well-being, and ensuring personal growth lies in understanding the balance between being friendly and respecting your own boundaries. Being overly friendly can often lead to emotional exhaustion, blurred lines, and a lack of true connection with others. It's essential to recognize that kindness, empathy, and availability are powerful, but they must be paired with self-respect and clarity. By setting boundaries, teaching others how to treat you, and engaging in difficult conversations, you create space for deeper, more authentic relationships. You show others the importance of mutual respect, and most importantly, you show yourself that your needs matter just as much as anyone else's. Remember, being liked by everyone is not the goal. Being true to yourself and cultivating relationships that honor your value is the path to peace, self-respect, and lasting connection. So stop being too friendly at the cost of your well-being, and start embracing the power of balance, honesty, and self-respect. It's through these actions that you will grow, both as a person and in your relationships with others.